President Volodymyr Zelenski says Ukraine is ready for peace talks with Russia, but not in neighboring Belarus as venue. The highest authorities of the armed forces of Honduras held a ceremony to transfer their command to President Xiomara Castro, which makes her the general commander of the armed institution. Thousands of Shiites from across Iraq gathered in Baghdad on Saturday to mark the death of 8th century Imam Musa al-Qadim. Hi, this is From the South. I am your news anchor, Dio Martin, from the TeleSUR studios in Havana. We begin with the news. President Volodymyr Zelenski of Ukraine says the country is ready for peace talks with Russia, but not in neighboring Belarus's venue. Russia and the Ukraine government said this Sunday separately their willingness to start negotiations to resolve the current conflict. However, they differed on the place to carry out the bilateral dialogue. The spokesman for the Russian presidency, Dmitry Peskov, reported that a Russian delegation is already in the city of Gomel in Belarus to begin talks with the Ukrainian side. Meanwhile, the Ukrainian government proposed the cities of Warsaw, Budapest, or Istanbul, among others, as alternative venues. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenski decried any intention of laying down arms. On the contrary, he was emphatic about the resolve to continue fighting to defend their territory.
Good morning to all Ukrainians. There is a lot of false information on internet, a false call on my part to soldiers to lay down their weapons, saying there is an ongoing massive evacuation. The situation is this: I'm here and we are not laying down our arms. We will defend our country because our weapons are our troops. Our truth is that is our land, our country, our sons and daughters. And we will defend all of this. That's all I want to say. Glory to Ukraine.
Meanwhile, the Russian armed forces have disabled 975 military targets in Ukraine since the beginning of the special operation. Among them, there were 23 command posts and communication centers of the Ukrainian armed forces, 3 action points from the 301st Air Defense Complex, and 48 radio stations. The Russian military reported also the shooting down of 8 combat aircrafts and helicopters, 11 unmanned air vehicles, and 2.2-point tactical missiles. 223 tanks and other armored combat vehicles were destroyed, along with 39 multiple launch rocket systems and 86 field artillery guns and mortars. The Russian Defense Ministry assured that the attacks don't target Ukrainian cities, nor do they endanger the civilian population. Russia claimed 16 Ukrainian Navy gunboats attacked Russian Black Sea Fleet ships on Friday night as they were transporting 82 Ukrainian servicemen who surrendered on Snake Island off the northern Black Sea coast. According to the Russian Defense Ministry, the Ukrainian gunboats used swarming tactics in retaliation for the surrendered Ukrainian troops so they could be able to accuse the Russian army of the massacre of prisoners. According to the source, as a result of the naval clash, 6 boats were destroyed. None of the 82 Ukrainian servicemen on the Snake Island was injured. On the other side, Ukrainian president said that all men had died and promised to award them as heroes of Ukraine posthumously. Yet Moscow assured that after fulfilling the legal procedures, these soldiers would be released to return to their families. And the Russian space agency Roscosmos has suspended cooperation with its European partners in organizing joint space launches from the Kourou port in the French Guiana. Roscosmos Director General Dmitry Rogozin said the decision to halt joint launches spawns from the economic and technological sanctions imposed on Russia by the European Union, which hinder the normal development agreed upon to keep the facility running properly. Furthermore, he said some 87 Russian citizens will be sent back to Russia. These are mostly personnel specialized in frigate launch technology, which allows the orbital launch of supplies for the International Space Station. And adding to that, on Saturday, the U.S., Canada, and the key European countries, including Germany, agreed to remove selected Russian banks from the SWIFT payment system. The leaders of the European Commission, France, Germany, Italy, the United Kingdom, Canada, and the U.S. issued a joint statement accusing Russia of unleashing forces and assaulting Kyiv and saying they are resolved to continue imposing costs on Russia that will further isolate the Eurasian nation from the international financial system and their economies, but didn't offer a specific date nor which Russian banks will be sanctioned. SWIFT is the world's main international payments network. Several countries have already expressed support for locking Russia out of the platform, and Germany, which had previously opposed the measure, lent its support earlier today. They also announced plans to launch a transatlantic task force which will ensure sanctions on Russians remain effective. Now, in the light of the escalation of international sanctions, the Russian Federation announced that they plan to reciprocate and evaluate bilateral relations with those countries, imposing measures on them. The Security Council's Vice President Dmitry Medvedev warned that sanctions against his country are an excellent occasion to review bilateral relations and open the possibility of interrupting the dialogue on strategic stability. For its behalf, the Federal Air Transport Agency announced that since European countries closed on Saturday the passage of flights coming from Russia, reciprocal measures will be taken and Russian airspace will be closed to them. Thus, only flights with special permission from the federal agency or the Russian Ministry of Foreign Affairs will be allowed to fly over their airspace. Cuba demands a solution that guarantees the security and sovereignty of all regarding the Ukraine-Russia conflict. Now, Cuba's foreign ministry took to Twitter to condemn the U.S. determination to continue NATO's progressive expansion towards the borders of the Russian Federation and said such efforts led to a situation with far-reaching and unpredictable implications that could have been prevented. According to the statement, it is not possible to examine the situation in Ukraine with accuracy and honesty without carefully assessing the fair claims of the Russian Federation to the United States and NATO and the factors that have led to the use of force and the non-observance of legal principles and international rules to which Cuba subscribes and supports with all its strength and which are an essential reference, particularly for small countries, against hegemonism, abuses of power, and injustice. The statement follows, quote unquote, Cuba is a defender of international law and committed to the United Nations Charter, which will always defend peace and oppose the use or threat of force against any state, and call for a serious, constructive, and realistic diplomatic solution to the current crisis in Europe by peaceful means, which guarantees the security and sovereignty of all, as well as regional and international peace, stability, and security. We're going to take a short break now. Please join us again after this. Welcome back to From the South. On Friday, the highest authorities of the armed forces of Honduras held a ceremony to transfer their command to President Xiomara Castro, which makes her the general commander of the armed forces institution in the country. During the ceremony at the Campo Parada Marte in Tegucigalpa, Castro carried out a tour accompanied by the Minister of Defense, Jose Manuel Zelaya, and greeted the troops that make up the country's armed forces. Rear Admiral and Chief of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Jose Jorge Fortín Aguilar, performed the honors of ordnance and handed the baton of command to the Honduran ruler. The president announced that as of February 28th, she will gradually begin the process of removing the armed forces from the administration and custody of the country's penitentiary system. At the same time, she stressed that they will continue to support the work of the National Police on its mission to guarantee public security. The government of the Dominican Republic began the construction of a wall on its border with Haiti. Our correspondent in that nation, Daisy Touzon, tells us the details.
In the Dominican Republic, the construction of a wall called the Intelligent Border Defense between the Dominican Republic and Haiti has formally begun.
We are committed to the construction of an intelligent border fence, a fence that will benefit both countries because it will allow for a much more efficient control of bilateral trade, regulate migratory flows to combat the mafias that traffic with people, and deal with drug trafficking and illegal arms sale.
There are 392 kilometers of borders between the two countries, but there are only 4 official border crossings: Elías Piña, Jimaní, Pedernales, and Dajabón. Most of them do not have dividing fences. In February 2021, the Dominican president announced the construction of the wall.
We will start building on the dividing line between the two countries, the Dominican Republic and Haiti. New security reinforcement measures that will combine physical and technological means, such as movement sensors, recognition cameras, and infrared systems.
The project presented integrates a physical fence with lighting system, command center, motion control and sensors, video surveillance cameras with infrared systems, as well as the infrastructure along the borderline.
The policy of building a wall on the Dominican-Haitian border by the government of President Abinader is more than a political mistake. It is an economical mistake and a social mistake. Both at the international level, the wall policy has been widely discussed, disputed, and discredited. On the economic level, let us remember that Haiti is the first commercial partner of the Dominican Republic, and any policy that does not be on good neighborliness, not only between states but also between peoples, will be an attack, an aggression to the coexistence, a development that precedes any prosperity and economic development.
In 2019, under the previous government's administration, the construction of a 2,000-meter-long fence started in Pedernales, but it was destroyed due to the overflowing of a river after the passage of the storm Laura in 2020. President Luis Abinader justified the building of the wall to stop irregular migration from Haiti. Some applaud this decision, and others understand that this wall is not only a physical construction, but that it builds rejection, intolerance, and exclusion.
Para TeleSUR, Daisy Toussaint, República Dominicana.
Thousands of colorfully dressed dancers and musicians kicked off carnival celebrations in the Bolivian city of Oruro on Saturday. Paraders said they were missing their traditional celebration after being canceled last year. Almost everyone in Oruro, a former mining center in western Bolivia, has a role as a dancer, musician, dressmaker, or makeup artist. The event, one of Latin America's most famous, involves around 20,000 dancers dressed in traditional costumes and musicians that parade through the streets of the city. The events, which attracted hundreds of visitors to Bolivia, last throughout the weekend. Oruro's Carnival is a United Nations World Heritage event.
We got this illness in one moment or another, thanks to the mom of the Socavon who has made us reborn. This is the strength that she gave us to heal. Maybe other siblings left, and in their memory, we dance and peregrinate today.
And in Argentina, authorities were able to contain and reduce wildfires in the province of Corrientes by 70%, in part thanks to the recent rainfall. However, at least 4 fires remain active. According to the Emergency Operations Command, among the areas that still have active fires are Palmar Grande, Loma Linda, Paraje Zapallo, and part of San Miguel. Bruno Robinson, Deputy Director of Civil Defense, said they have the operational capacity and the qualified personnel to continue with the firefighting effort, and that they estimate to have control of all fires within the next 48 hours. According to Argentina's National Institute of Technology, the flames have devastated nearly 1 million hectares already. In Peru, communities on the coast and the Amazon jungle have asked the United Nations for support to provide justice in the face of the ecological damage caused by oil spills, a problem that has affected them directly for decades. Representatives of native communities from the jungle and the north coast in Peru sent a letter to the United Nations Rapporteur on Toxic Substances and Human Rights, Marco Orellana, relating their experiences, requests, and lamentations. Orellana is in Peru on an academic visit. In their letter, they demand liability not just from the companies involved, but from their country's government. They rightly claim that the spills in the area destroyed the fisheries for decades, depriving them of their source of income and making their people sick. They told them of the importance of conveying their message to Peruvian President Pedro Castillo and to the international community. We have more news coming up after a final short break. Please stay with us. Welcome back. Thousands of Shiites from across Iraq gathered in Baghdad on Saturday to mark the death of 8th century Imam Musa al-Qadim. Pilgrims traveling to the holy shrine of Imam Musa al-Qadim traditionally trek by foot to the twin-domed mosque in Kazimiya. The pilgrims are commemorating Imam Musa al-Qadim, the 7th holy Imam for the Shiite worshippers, who died in 799 AD. He was buried in a mosque in the northern Baghdad neighborhood of Kazimiya, a mainly Shiite area. For such a large event, the Iraqi forces have tightened security measures. Security forces have blocked most of the surrounding roads in fear of attacks against pilgrims and adopted wide-scale deployment in the area. Insurgents have previously staged attacks on Shiites during this religious occasion.
There are millions of people heading toward the holy city, and your brothers in the security forces and other service departments are staying up day and night in order to provide security and protection for these pilgrims.
The Cape Town Pride Festival returned after a 2-year hiatus due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Unlike other post-lockdown events in South Africa, the Pride Festival was open to people who haven't been vaccinated against coronavirus. About 2,000 people held the event as began at 12 p.m. local time, with various streets throughout the tourist center closed due to the event. Saturday's walk and entertainment were preceded by a series of socials such as a roller skating night, hikes, a poetry evening, and a film festival. In March, celebrations will continue with Pride Proms for a night of musical enjoyment with the Cape Town Philharmonic Orchestra. The last Pride Parade was held in 2020, just before the global COVID-19 lockdown, which left people isolated and, in many cases, losing their jobs and income.
Because, days like today really brings a crowd of people that know what it is to live on the Cape Flats, to know what it is living on the farmlands. So we get our day today. You are a mofijo boneclia, and all those hard, disrespectful words. But we build on that, and it's still a long way for us to go. But we also hope that the government can also look at us and give us a seat at the table. But also, if you don't have a seat at the table, rather just go ahead and build your own.
For the past 3 years, Brazil's President Jair Bolsonaro has continually spread fake news about a small city in Sao Paulo called Araraquara. We sent our correspondent Brian Mayer there to find out why.
As U.S. President, Donald Trump singled out the city of Chicago, constantly using it as an example of everything he thought was bad. Since taking the Brazilian presidency, Jair Bolsonaro has done exactly the same thing with a city in São Paulo called Araraquara.
Então tem prefeito aí que cometeu barbaridade, como de Araraquara.
Our city government is an antagonist to Bolsonaro. We are against his anti-vaccine policies of death. We believe in saving lives and supporting science, something that he is also against. This is why he constantly attacks this government, which is on the side of science, vaccine and life, and strengthening the public health system, which is something he wants to destroy.
When Araraquara became the first city in Brazil to fully adopt WHO lockdown guidelines for COVID-19, President Bolsonaro announced that the population was starving to death and sent the army in to distribute food. Last week, he returned to the subject, falsely claiming that hungry people in Araraquara are eating cats and dogs.
We are victims of fake news because during this entire pandemic, we have implemented an adequate food security policy. We have been delivering food to vulnerable families the whole time.
It's not just the fact that the Araraquara government contradicts federal government COVID-19 guidelines that bothers President Bolsonaro. What really seems to bother him is the fact that 95% of the population has ignored his advice and taken at least one dose of the vaccine.
We show people the numbers of people who have gotten sick and died without taking the vaccine. Our health department uses the strategy of convincing people by showing the numbers and the reality of how important it is to follow science.
Brian Muir, TeleSUR, Araraquara.
We've come to the end of this news brief, but remember you can find these and many other stories on our website at TeleSUR English. You can also join us on social media for all the latest news. We're on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Telegram. For TeleSUR English, I'm Dio Martin. Thanks for watching.